So good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Soto. I'm from the Issara Institute. I'm here with my colleagues, Chaw and Sandar. We are all based in Bangkok, and we're very happy to be part of this conference and start over with this discussion on workers' power and workers' voice. So I would like to pass it over to my colleague, Chaw, and then Sandar. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. Yes, I'm Chaw. I'm the regional director with Issara Institute. I'm based in Bangkok, but I'm currently joining the webinar from Phnom Penh, Cambodia. It's really nice to see you and looking forward to this session. Thank you. Over to you, Sandar.
Thank you, Machicha. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Sandar. I'm a regional technical specialist based in Bangkok. I hope you can hear me, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm based in Bangkok. I'm a regional technical specialist, mainly focusing on inclusive labor monitoring. Thank you.
Okay. So let's start off. Okay, here, maybe you can see the slide well. We can start sharing the PowerPoint. Thank you, Joseph. Okay, so many anti-trafficking conferences might start off their conference with a plenary talk on some new aspect of prevention, protection, prosecution, possibly partnership. It might talk about innovation or survival led movements. And definitely we are excited to be here all about these things over the course of the conference. But we are very grateful to Chap Dai, Helen, Joe, and the whole ARAT conference team for inviting us, the Issara Institute team, to start off with talking about worker power, worker voice, and the importance of worker-led economic and social justice, which may sound so different from anti-trafficking, but it is really not. So if we go to the next slide, we would like to start with a round of quick poll for everyone. It's a very simple poll just to get to know you better, whether your organization work on worker power and worker-led solution. Thank you so much for your poll answers. Yeah, so thank you so much. I think we can share the poll result. Oh no, I think this is the, okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we can stop the poll now. and share the results. So from the first poll, we can see that, almost half of us are our anti-trafficking organizations are working on worker power and worker-led solution. And a few of you said no, but majority said a little bit. And then a number also said yes, yes, a lot. So, okay, so can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, next slide. Thank you. So we are dealing with exploitation every single day, both exploitation in the migration and labor recruitment process, and also exploitation in workplace, and getting duty bearers to make it right at different level. For remediation, immediate harms, like paying workers back who were cheated on their wages or holidays, and to system strengthening, like making sure those HR people have the training and investigation and disciplinary structure in place to ensure worker getting cheated on the wages and holidays doesn't happen again. And to ecosystem level work, which is stepping back a bit and saying, why are so many workers getting cheated in their wages and holiday in this industry or in this country or even in the region? Who else have responsibility here? How can we get the problem in front of them to also be part of the solution? So the worker-led part is really important because it is workers who are the best one to verify, have the immediate harms really being properly remediated? Are the supervisors, like their leaders in the production line, or the human resource staff really acting any better or more respectfully, less exploitative over time? Or are the overall pressure and the ways workers are being treated in the workplace and in the society really improving the way it needs to? And then look at the boxes across the bottom. Who should be answering the questions of, are we really making the lives of people we serve better? Who could best say if workers and exploitative people are being treated in an empowering manner and not paternalistic or patronizing? If more workers were empowered to be able to monitor and act on what they are seeing and experiencing, if their voices are heard, if duty bearers were compelled by law to respond to them, wouldn't be expected to significantly drive down level of exploitation, human trafficking, and exploitative recruitment globally, given that the majority of the world's trafficking and exploitation is labor trafficking and exploitation. Can we think of anything else in the past 20 years that has significantly moved the needle in terms of driving down exploitation and human trafficking? We can't, right? But our first few years of results have given us the signal to keep going on this track, the newer track aiming to significantly move to the needle on human trafficking. So if go to the next slide, we would like to share with you, who are we? So Issara means freedom. We are a nonprofit organization established in 2014 by a team of anti-trafficking experts who created an alliance of private sector, civil society, government partners to address labor trafficking in the global supply chain. Issara connects global brands and retailers to empowered, safeguarded worker voice. We are constantly evolving all the way that we can build more effective partnership, tools and technology to identify, remediate labor abuses in supply chains that are not being detected and resolved by audit or social compliance schemes. We have our three main components. The first one is outreach and empowerment, where we have worker voice, empowerment, and worker-led programming at origin and destination countries. Secondly, we have Issara Lab, where we have technology and data that empower workers as well as increase visibility of labor and social risks throughout the supply chain and strengthen multilingual grievance management. The third component is business and human rights, where we enhance a partnership for supply chain, the ethical supply chain, working with all the actors involved, workers, supplier, recruiter, global brands and retailer, grassroots organizations, industrial association, and government. We help identify solutions to remediate worker-reported issue and also address root causes with improvement informed by the feedback and experiences of workers. So the next slide will show you where are we operating our program. We started our work in Thailand as the destination country when we started Issara back in 2014 and started working in Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos PRD the following years. Because being based in origin and destination country of workers, it's vital to understanding constantly changing recruitment processes and help supplier, employer understand and responsibly navigate first mile risk in labor recruitment. In 2022, we have started our expansion to Malaysia, where many of our strategic partners are sourcing from and wanting us to replicate Issara model working with their suppliers. While we have our strategic partners request an interest to work on their supply chain in Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, we are also very fortunate to have Walmart Foundation and Target Foundation supporting our expansion, so we can work with our civil society partners to roll out our Golden Dream Marketplace application in Malaysia, as well as the origin countries such as Nepal. And the countries in light green are where we are exploring our future expansion based on the need and opportunity. So when we mention our strategic partners, I would like to go to the next slide of introducing who are our strategic partners. So here are the 13 global brands and retailers that we are working closely in addressing labor risks in their supply chain. So they have more visibility of what are happening in their supply. They can use their leverage as the buyer, as the customers to help the supplier and the recruitment agencies address those labor risks. And as mentioned before, we have our Walmart Foundation and the Target Foundation as our development partner to accelerate the operationalization of ethical recruitment channel and expand our worker-based, community-based job seekers and worker empowerment approaches. So if we go to the next slide, we can see, let's have a glimpse of what does the supply chain look like by using the example of seafood supply chain. When we say global brands and retailers are responsible for the welfare of workers in their supply chain, and like workers are not being kind of exploited and being forced to work, it is not only covered the first tier where the final products are being made, but all the tier down to the upstream. Like so here you can see fishing vessels, port and piers, fish meal plants, feed meal, ponds, in case of like having, in case of seafood supply chain as an example. And next slide, I would like to share with you that all the global businesses have their code of conducts and standard for supplier to address human rights and labor issues in their supply chain, acknowledging the vulnerability of foreign migrant workers. These standards cover not only the abuses and labor risks in the workplace, but also starting from the recruitment process, where trafficking and forced labor can take place, where job seekers can be deceived, giving false information, document being withheld, power are being abused, having to pay excessive and illegal costs and fees leading to debt bondage and forced labor situation. In most of the cases, these corporate code of conduct set higher standards than the national laws. For instance, employers have to implement employer pay principle where migrant workers shall not be required to pay for their employment. And any loss and damages and violation of the rights of workers to be remediated timely and effectively. And if they are failing to do so, may result in termination of their business relationship. So we have all these great business code of conduct and supplier standards. And so we just asked the poll, if we go to the next slide, do these channels for remediation ever come up with your organization day-to-day work and collaboration with other fellow anti-trafficking actors? And we just had the poll where we can see that not all the organizations here are really using this channel of remediation. So we can see that 26% saying no, and 62% good that like we are using this a little bit to remediate the workers. And of course, 12% of our participants, our conference participants today said yes a lot. So great, we would like to hear your experiences during this section of how are you using this, so we can learn from each other as well. So if we go to the next slide, please. Oh, can we go back? Sorry. Back. Okay, so if we go one slide back. Okay, so yes, we have also learned that many of the anti-trafficking actors working on labor exploitation are not being aware and using this channel for remediation, while we all have experienced that in most countries, the national laws and criminal justice system are not effective in serving the victim. The laws are actually changing, as like many of are being aware here, I guess. The laws are changing here in US, UK, and other European countries, such as France, Germany, and the Netherlands, such that they are now becoming legally liable for addressing working condition in their global supply chain, and pressures and requirement from laws such as US Tariff Act, European Mandatory Human Rights Due Diligence are higher and hit the bottom line more than predecessors such as California Transparency in Supply Chain Act. Let's hold the business accountable and also support them to implement their corporate code of conduct and standard effectively, so that we have exploitation-free global supply chains, because we do not want to see any labor trafficking and like trafficking of victim who are making the product for these kind of big like multi-million global brands, right? Now we'd like to give a floor to my colleague Sandar, who have been working closely with the workers to share with you how we are working to empower workers and having the worker voice as the solution to the business to address labor issue, because having good business is good for the workers and having good workers is good for business. So I now would like to hand it over to my colleague Sandar to talk about what is happening on the ground, what we are working on the ground.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Macha. If we can go next slide, please. Okay, yeah, we've already learned about this standard code of conducts and remediations and these different channels, right? So now let's see who are the key stakeholders on the ground that are involved in the remediation process and build workers and job seekers power, right? So when we are looking at the job seeker empowerment and different channels of remediation, we want to highlight how important roles CSOs can play on the ground since the first mile of the recruitment journey of the job seekers, right? So here on the top left, you can see our CSO partners conducting empowerment program with job seekers in their villages. And CSO partners' role is very important as they have a good relationship with the job seekers and they are trusted by job seekers. That's why they are in the good position to provide all the useful information and assistance needed that will help job seekers to actively identify and avoid exploitation and human trafficking situation, right? So during this kind of outreach activities that CSO partners conduct, they also identify and train the local ambassadors. Some of them could be returned migrant workers and community leaders, and CSO partners help build knowledge and skill to reach out to job seekers. So job seekers in the village, they have someone in their community who they can approach and seek information and support whenever they need. So ambassadors also play a very important role in the communities. Because they are actively seeking for updated information. Job seekers are actively seeking for updated information, and they need that they can share with the job seekers for further support and guidance. There have been some cases where job seekers are being cheated by local brokers, but then being remediated because of the help of the CSO partners. So we are also seeing how job seekers are changing their behavior, and instead of relying on the informal brokers, they now become smarter and empowered to confront brokers and seek information before making decisions and help their community, their friends in their villages. So when we are looking at activities and engagement with job seekers, such kind of activities conducted by the CSOs, community leaders, ambassadors, we call it job seekers empowerment rather than safe migration. Because we want to emphasize the part about building up job seekers to be able to make good, informed decisions and have access to as many choices as much as possible. As part of the empowerment approach, if we see the second photo on the right, our CSO partner again in Myanmar introducing an application that is called Golden Dreams that Chaw has briefly mentioned about. And the Golden Dream application has been created by us, Issara, for job seekers and migrant workers. So in the application, it allows workers and job seekers to find information about working and living abroad, rate and review their employers and recruitment agencies, and they can also apply to read real job posted by official recruitment agencies. During this kind of outreach activities that are being conducted by key stakeholders, key actors on the ground, CSOs, partners, and ambassadors, they introduce the app with the application with the job seekers and provide training on how to use the application and how to apply for a job from their home without having to rely on the informal brokers. If we can go to next slide, please. So in my previous slide, we've learned the key actors on the ground, and then in this slide, so we will learn about pre-employment decision and what happens when job seekers make decision to apply for a job in abroad. So once these job seekers have made a decision to migrate and they have applied and have been accepted by a recruitment agency, we will conduct pre-departure orientation training with them as well. So in that pre-departure orientation, before these job seekers depart to foreign country, we communicate with these job seekers about our worker voice communication channels. So we are able to be in touch with them since the beginning of the recruitment process, when they arrive to the workplace, during their employment, and up till their return. So it means workers can reach out to us anytime. And in this way, we can monitor the recruitment process by giving a safe space for them to speak or chat with us whenever they need any information or assistance. Yeah, it is important to connect with workers since first mile. Only then we can build trust, and workers will feel safer to share their issues with the person or the organization that they trust the most. This will help support the suppliers and the recruitment agencies that are part of the global supply chain to improve their system and work on plan of actions that are informed by workers' voices, real experiences. I mean, workers and worker voices and their real experiences, right? So if we can go to next slide, please. Okay, so by building this kind of trust on since the first mile since their villages, job seekers and workers starting from their first mile, we can get their experiences throughout the recruitment process. What went well, what didn't, and whether they ended up paying for the zero-cost jobs, how they are being coached and introduced by the brokers or recruitment agencies, and what could be done better to make an ethical recruitment possible, right? So this kind of recommendations from the job seekers and workers and their experiences are very valuable, that we can use them not only to build the capacity of recruitment agencies and their staff and improve their system, but also for long-term system building with industry associations. For example, in Myanmar, we work closely with Myanmar Overseas Employment Agency Federation, or MOEAF, as we call, where we have initiative to address the ecosystem strengthening. So, and of course, having good relationship, having good recruitment agencies and their system, it will help prevent thousands of desperate job seekers from being deceived and cheated and ended up in debt bondage, forced labor situation, which is what we all anti-trafficking actors would like to see happen, right? So yeah, so far now we have learned about the important role of different key stakeholders on the ground and the way we provide assistance to job seekers and the process that we monitor to help recruiters and the suppliers improve their system. Now I would like to hand this over to my colleague Anna to share what happened in the destination country when these job seekers arrived.
Thank you, Sandar. Thank you. Yeah, so similarly to origin countries, in the destination countries, one of the ways that parties collecting data on working conditions can ensure positive outcomes for workers is to run systems to monitor ongoing labor conditions. This is opposed to taking only very intermittent point-in-time measurements as with audits. Since working conditions change, the issues and abuses that workers face in farms and factories are not static, and issues should be identified and resolved as they arise and are raised by workers, not just whenever something is found in an audit that may occur once in a year or even less. It is well known that social audits have limitations and can fail to identify, detect, and remediate labor violations and signs of forced labor and exploitation. There are different reasons why such limitations exist, such as not comprehensive, consistent, or poor methodologies for data collection and analysis being used to assess working conditions. So these methodologies do not capture the real experiences of workers. And some other reasons are also related to limited transparency, accountability, and action from different parties. But there are alternative ways to audit such as workers-driven approaches, focused on empowering workers and building community power. So let's go to the next slide to see how worker power look like in the country of destination. So if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So the photo on the left is with Cambodian ambassadors during the training session. The photo on the top right is during the community outreach in Thailand. And the photo on the bottom right is with Myanmar workers in Malaysia, connecting to our workers' voice channels. We are connected with 300,000 workers through our workers' voice channels, and we hear from 10,000 plus workers monthly. And we conduct pre-departure training with 5,000 plus workers to reach and connect with them. We build trust before they migrate, and we're able to support them and empower them through their recruitment process. And we continue engaging with them at the destination country. So similarly to the ambassadors program in country of origin, in destination countries like Thailand and Malaysia, we are conducting training with workers with empowerment approaches to build workers' power and connect them with technology tool that allows them to raise their voices. So my colleague Chaw will share more about the different spaces where workers' voice and the active role workers are playing in advocacy. So I would like to hand it over back to you, Macho. Thank you.
So let's go to the next slide where we will want to show you here 2 photos. The one on the top left are where we had a meeting that returned fishermen from Indonesia. I think some of you or many of you might have aware of these, the fishermen being enslaved, fishermen working on Thai boat, the Burmese, Cambodia, but majority Burmese are being enslaved onto the Thai boat and being kind of stuck in Indonesian waters, and many are being rescued from Bendina and other small islands in Indonesia back in 2014-15, right? So we are in contact with those fishermen after they come back, and here is this photo where we had meeting with them to collect their recommendations on what should be done to prevent human trafficking and forced labor in the fishing sector, because all these governments were talking about all this policy formulation, policy implementation, but the voices of fishermen are being lacked in the whole conversation. So we really believe that it should be workers' involvement in those advocacy kind of talks. And so the photo on the bottom right is where we are filming workers who share with us their stories and experiences, so their voices will be heard by global businesses and many others. This is a good segue to the actual video that the workers were working on, which we would like to show now. It is a new show series that we are supporting workers to design and produce, called Tuned Into Worker Voices. Although in Burmese we have a more lyrical name, we call they name it Yinduing Kanza Alutama Atanya, which didn't translate well, but it is a very nice word in Burmese. But in English we said Tune Into Worker Voices. So the first episode is about 10 minutes, and it's on the topic of how does forced labor exist in workplaces that seems fine. That seems fine to labor inspector, seems fine to audit who come to do audit and meet with workers in the factory floor. it seems fine to other government and business visitors. We also know that many customers visit these factories. They do not see all these kind of abuses and pressure, like how workers are being forced to produce the products that they are buying. So let's see what they have to say. And we hope this message can stay in the back of your mind, all of our mind, through the course of the conference and beyond. So we can go to the next slide, and where we can hear the voices of the workers and the suggestions. We will play a video.
Milava, Chamaname Bailama, Chubuaba, Tayota Linishi Babi, Kulo Maro, Samubaga Mashide, Janga Sayoma, Lolo Nivaration.
Minglaba, Jamanamega, in Yang Tuba, Outreach and Empowerment Officer Pipare, Issara and Diapa.
Jamaro, debut Maso in season de Satunine, Palma Pipare, debut Masolution, the Sayuni Hapono, the Apiman Zilushe, the Gecko, Gaune, Lutia, we met, the Gala Dejara, a lot of Maria, PRP Muri, Pom Mune, Jumbunia, debut Riani, Piopiato Mapshipare.
ဟုတ်ပါတယ်ကျမတို့ရွှေ့ပြောင်းအလုပ်သမားတွေအလုပ်လုပ်နေကြတဲ့လုပ်ငန်းခွင်မှာဆိုရင်ပစ္စည်းတွေထုတ်ကြတယ်ထုတ်ကုန်တွေထုတ်ကြတယ်ဒီထုတ်ကုန်တွေကိုပြည်ပမှာရှိတဲ့ဝယ်ယူစားသုံးတဲ့သူတွေရဲ့လက်ထဲကိုရောက်အောင်ဆိုပြီးတော့မှဝယ်လက်တွေကဒီစက်ရုံတွေကပစ္စည်းတွေဝယ်ပြီးတော့မှပို့ကြတာပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့ဒီလုပ်ငန်းခွင်မှာရှိနေကြတဲ့အလုပ်သမားတွေရင်ဆိုင်နေရတဲ့ပြဿနာတွေတို့အခက်အခဲတွေကိုကြတော့ဝယ်လက်တွေအနေနဲ့မတိကြတာများတယ်စက်ရုံထဲမှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းလုပ်ငန်းစစ်တွေဝင်တယ်သူတို့ရဲ့အစီရင်ခံစာတွေမှာဆိုရင်အလုပ်အခြေအနေတွေတော်တော်များများအရန်ကိုကောင်းနေကြတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ခုနကပြောသလိုမျိုးတကယ်လက်တွေ့အခြေအနေတွေကိုကြတော့ထင်ဟပ်မပြသနေဘူးပေါ့နော်ကျမတို့ဒီဗီဒီယိုထဲမှာဆိုရင်အလုပ်သမားတွေကသူတို့လက်တွေ့ရင်ဆိုင်နေရတဲ့အခက်အခဲတွေကိုလည်းပြန်ပြီးတော့မှဝေမျှထားတယ်ဒီလိုမျိုးလက်တွေ့ကြတဲ့ဖြစ်ပျက်တွေကိုနားထောင်စေချင်လို့လည်းအဲ့ဒီရည်ရွယ်ချက်နဲ့ဒီဗီဒီယိုကိုကျမတို့ကရိုက်ကူးပြီးတော့မှတင်ဆက်ပေးတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်
ကျမတို့လုပ်သမားတွေရဲ့ဒီမှာရှိတဲ့ Issara အဖွဲ့ရဲ့ပူးပေါင်းပြီးတော့ကျမတို့လုပ်သမားတွေခံစားနေရတဲ့ပြဿနာမျိုးမျိုးကိုလုပ်သမားချင်းချင်းရဲ့နောက်ပြီးတော့ဝယ်လက်တွေရဲ့နောက်ပြီးတော့ဝယ်စားသုံးတဲ့သူတွေသိရှိအောင်လို့ဒီဗီဒီယိုလေးကိုပြောပြပေးတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်ရှင်
တစ်ဆက်တည်းမှာပဲဒီလိုမျိုးဖိအားပေးစေခိုင်းခံရမှုတွေရဲ့အခြေခံအကြောင်းကိုနားလည်လုပ်ပြီးတော့ပုံစံနဲ့လဲဆိုတာကိုလည်းကျမတို့နီလန်းတွေစူးစမ်းပြီးတော့အဖြေထုတ်သွားမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်။နမဲကြီးကောင်အမှတ်တစိတ်တွေကိုထုတ်ပေးနေတဲ့စက်ယုံတွေအလုပ်ယုံတွေမှာတော့မှပဲအလုပ်သမားတွေကပုံစံအမျိုးမျိုးနဲ့ဖိအားပေးစေခိုင်းခံရမှုတွေရှိနေတယ်ဆိုတာကိုကျမတို့ဒီနေ့ဗီဒီယိုထဲမှာဆိုရင်ရွှေ့ပြောင်းအလုပ်သားညီကောင်မတွေနဲ့သူတို့ရဲ့မိတ်ဆွေတွေကနေတစ်စိတိလာတဲ့အချက်အလက်တွေကိုပြန်လည်ပြီးတော့မှဝေမျှပေးသွားတာကိုအတူတူနားထောင်ကြည့်လိုက်ရအောင်နော်
ခုနတွေကလိုက်ထမ်းမှဆိုတော့ရဲရဲဆက်ဆက်တယ်တခါတလေကြောက်လို့ရှိရင်လုံသမားတွေကိုထီလျောက်တော်တာတို့အဲ့ဒီလိုပဲစိတ်တာလို့ရိုက်ချတာလို့အဲ့ဒီလိုမျိုးပြောဆိုဆက်ဆက်လေးရှိတယ်တခါတလေကြောက်လို့ရှိရင်လုံသမားတွေကပြောလို့ရှိရင်သူတို့ကလှုပ်ချင်လှုပ်မလှုပ်ချင်ထွဲဆိုတဲ့ပုံစံမျိုးနဲ့သူတို့ပြောဆိုဆက်ဆက်ကြတယ်အဲ့ဒီဟာကိုလုံသမားတွေကမကျေနပ်လို့ရောက်ခါကိုတော့ပြောတယ်တော့ပြောလို့ရှိရင်လည်းရောက်ခါကလည်းထိရောက်ရေးယူပေးတာတွေမျိုးမရှိဘူးလုံသမားတွေစကားကိုနားမထောင်ပေးကြဘူး
ဆဲဆိုကြိမ်မအောင်တော့ပြောလက်ညိုးထိုးပြီးတော့ပြောတာတို့လေဘင်းတွေပါတယ်ဒီလိုဂုတ်တွေနဲ့ထိုးပြီးတော့ညစ်တာလို့အဲ့လိုမျိုးလေးတွေလုပ်တယ်ကွာကိုမြန်မာလူမျိုးတွေအများဆုံးသူတို့တွေရမ်းရမ်းပြပြဆက်ဆံတယ်ကွာသူတို့လူတွေကြတော့သူတို့လူမျိုးတွေကြတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးဆက်ဆံတာမရှိဘူးပေါ့
အိုဒီဆေးခိုင်းတယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကိုကမလှုပ်ချေလဲလှုပ်ရတယ်ညှိလို့မရဘူးနေမကောက်ဖြေးလို့တခုခုကိုမကိစ္စရေးကြီးကိစ္စရှိလို့ကိုကမဆဲတာအဲ့ဒီဟာကိုလည်းမရဘူးသူတို့ကအပြစ်ပေးတယ်နောက်ထပ်လည်းအိုဒီလောက်မပေးတော့ဘူး
အလုပ်သမားတွေမှာလေခွင့်ယူရတော်တော်စိတ်ပြဖို့ကောင်းတယ်ဒီမကောင်းလဲစင်ပါလေအလုပ်သမားတွေအတွက်ဖန်လုံရှိတယ်မပေးချင်ဘူးသူတို့ဆေးစာရွက်ယူလာရင်လည်းသူတို့မျက်နှာကိုကြည့်နေရတယ်သူတို့စောင့်အောင်ပြီးတော့အဲ့တော့အလုပ်သမားတွေမှာမစင်းကျင်လဲဆင်းရနေမကောင်းလဲကိုခွင့်ယူလို့ရရတာနဲ့မယူပါဘူးဖြစ်နေလို့နားတွေမှာ
မပြောတာအမှန်တယ်ခင်ဗျာဘာလို့လဲဆိုတော့ဒီကို့မှာရပ်ပိုင်ခွင့်ရှိတဲ့အခွင့်အရေးပေါ့နော်အခွင့်အရေးရပ်ပိုင်ခွင့်ရှိတဲ့ခွင့်ရယူတယ်ဆိုရင်တော့မှသူတို့တွေကမပေးချင်ဘူး
अहिले यो कोभिड पछाडि चाहिँ धेरै मान्छेहरू आफ्नो देश फर्केको कारणले गर्दाखेरि अलिकति के भन्छ मान्छेहरू कम्ती भएकोले गर्दाखेरि कामहरू चाहिँ धेरै गर्नुपर्ने चाहिँ छ मान्छेहरू कम्ती भएकोले गर्दाखेरि काममा चाहिँ एकदमै बढी खट्नुपर्ने भएको चाहिँ छ मान्छेहरू धेरै काममा खटिराखेको कारणले गर्दाखेरि उनीहरू स्वास्थ्यमा धेरै समस्या आउने सम्भावनाहरू चाहिँ देखिन्छ
धेरैभन्दा धेरै मान्छेहरू चाहिँ आफ्नो देश फर्केको कारणले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अहिले हरेक कम्पनीमा चाहिँ भनौँ न कम्पनीहरूलाई जति चाहिनु पर्ने हो त्यति मात्रामा पुगिरहेको छैन काम ज्यादा भएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ कतिपय ठाउँहरूमा चाहिँ बोसहरूले चाहिँ कम्पनीको म्यानेजमेन्ट पक्षहरूले चाहिँ काम गर्नै पर्ने बाध्यकारी उयो पनि बनाएको छ र गर्नै पर्छ त्यस्तै तरिकाले अब गरिरहेको
အလောက်သမားတွေကိုဈေးတိုးလာတဲ့ချိန်ဆိုရင်အလောက်သမားတွေကပျော်ရမယ့်နေနေတာကြောက်နေရတယ်။ဘာကြောင့်လဲဆိုတော့အလောက်ရှိတွေကကြတော့ဈေးတိုးတာနဲ့အများလူတွေရှော့ပြီးတော့ခိုင်းလာတယ်ဖိနှိပ်ပြီးခိုင်းလာတာပေါ့။အခုအလောက်ကို9ယောက်လောက်ရမယ့်နေရာမှာ4ယောက်ပဲထားတယ်3ယောက်ပဲထားတယ်2ယောက်လုံးမယ့်နေရာမှာ1ယောက်ပဲလောက်ရတယ်အဲ့ဒါပြီးရင်သူတို့လက်သုံးစကားကြတော့နေတို့လုံနိုင်ရေလုံမလုံနိုင်ရေထွေးဆိုတော့ထွေးတော့ရတဲ့အထက်မှာယောက်ျားလေးတွေပဲထွေးသွားတယ်အဲ့ဒါကြောင့်အဲ့ဒီယောက်ျားလေးတွေလုံမဲ့နေရာမှာညီမတို့မိန်းကလေးတွေပဲလုံရတာပေါ့မိန်းကလေးတွေလုံရတယ်အခုငါးမတဲ့နေရာတွေကနေထွေးသွားတယ်ဆိုရင်ညီမတို့မိန်းကလေးတွေငါးဆင်းမရတယ်ငါးဆင်းမတော့ငါလက်အကြီးလေလက်အကြီးကြတော့ငါလက်ကြီးမပေါ်ဆုံးမဆိုရင်ခြေထောက်ပြီးတော့ယူရတယ်ခြေထောက်ပြီးတော့အမချတယ်အဲ့ဒီရဖားတွေကတအားနာတယ်လေရဖားတွေနာတယ်တနေ့ကုန်မရတဲ့ဆိုတော့လူကတအားပိတ်ပန်းသွားတယ်ကလောင်မតាមដែលខ្ញុំដឹងពលកររោងចក្រផ្សេងៗក៏ខ្ញុំលើថាគេដកប៉ាសពតនិងឯកសារផ្សេងៗកុំឲ្យពលករយើងកាន់ទៅដើម្បីកុំឲ្យយើងដើរទៅណាឆ្ងាយហើយពលករយើងនឹងកាលណាអត់ប៉ាសពតអត់ឯកសារអត់អីចឹងមានការភ័យខ្លាចទី1ដើរឆ្ងាយទៅចង់ទៅផ្សារឬក៏ចង់ទៅណាចឹងខ្លាចតម្រួតព្រោះយើងមកដំបូងយើងលុយកាក់ក៏វាមិនសូវមានហើយក៏ភាសាក៏យើងមិនសូវចេះមិនសូវដឹងដែរអញ្ចឹងមានការភ័យខ្លាចច្រើនណាស់លោកពេលមកဆိုရင်အလုတ်ဆင်းရတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆင်းရတဲ့ခါကြလို့ရှိရင်သူတို့တွေမပေးချင်တဲ့နတ်စားတွေပေးချင်မပေးချင်တာတော့မပေးတာတွေလည်းရှိတယ်မရတာလေးတွေရှိတယ်အိုပိုတွေဆင်းတဲ့ခါကြအိုပိုတွေမပေးချင်တာလို့စီးရင်တွေမထည့်ပေးနေတာဝနာတွေကရန်ပြပြောဆက်ဆန်နဲ့ဆဲဆိုကြိမ်မောင်းတဲ့ခါတွေလည်းရှိတယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့လိုမျိုးရှိတဲ့ခါကြတော့လုံသမားတွေကထွက်ချင်တဲ့ခါကြထွက်လို့မရဘူး။ဘာကြောင့်ထွက်လို့မရလဲဆိုတော့အလုံးမာရီစီမာပြီးတဲ့ခါကျတော့အမတို့ကအခက်အခဲအများကြီးဖြစ်ထွက်ချင်တယ်ပေါ့။အဲ့လိုမျိုးထွက်တဲ့ခါကျတော့ဒီလိုမျိုးပြည့်စုံတော့အမတို့လည်းထွက်လို့ရတာပေါ့။မပြည့်စုံတဲ့ခါကျအမတို့ထွက်မရဘူး။အဲ့လိုမျိုးလေးတို့
Okay, so we can see that if we go to the next slide, we have a couple of slides remaining. Giving the essence of the time, we will also, if we go to the next slide, where there is a summary of all these kind of issues, right? The physical, verbal abuse, overworked and underpaid, forced to work, including while ill, document retention and restricted freedoms, punishment of workers resisting forced work. So while these issues are very common, and many of us working with the workers and labor trafficking victims have heard these for many years, why the exploiter still can get away with this? How can we identify and eliminate this issue? So I will now hand over back to Anna, my colleague, to share the solution that works based on our experience.
Great, thank you. Chaw, if we can go to the next slide, please. And the next one, yes, thank you. So as we saw in the video, as we have been sharing, workers should be the ones confirming what workers' conditions are like. And with this, we don't mean that workers responding to a short list of limited questions crafted by businesses according to what they want to hear about, but rather workers being able to raise their questions and concerns freely and voluntarily in their own words, whatever those issues may be. The only way we can drive positive outcomes for workers is to let workers define what needs to be remediated and when it needs to be remediated, not to limit it to business, whatever business is open to hear about. Also, we should mention that many workplaces never audited at all. For example, beyond second-tier workplaces, since audits are prohibitively expensive to carry out across all supply chains and tiers. And often these workers are not unionized. They have no choice unless we work hard to create spaces to give them a voice. This makes scalable workers' voice systems all the more needed, especially as supply chains get more murky and extended, and aggregators and subcontracting and retailers switching suppliers quite regularly, and so on. So as an alternative to social audits and its limitations, there are workers-driven approaches to focus on workers' voice, which has two fundamental aspects. First one is capturing the voices, experiences, and needs of workers. And the second one is channeling that voice into clear mechanism for remediation for those workers and for system change for long-term solutions. So the critical challenge is not just about obtaining credible, reliable data from workers. It is equally about having a clear, safe mechanism to work with employers, regulators, or the justice system to drive change and offer remediation to exploited and harmed workers, and being able to have ongoing monitoring of the actions taken to respond, de-identify risk, and then results that of these actions that are ultimately verified by workers. If we go to the next slide, please. So safeguarded workers' voice is definitely possible at scale as well as in depth. It is scalable thanks to the collaboration with CSO partners on the ground and to technology that allowed us to connect with workers anywhere and anytime. And it is in depth thanks to the relationship with workers and their trust. As I mentioned before, one of the key aspects of workers' voice is an ongoing engagement with workers and ongoing monitoring of their actual recruitment and working conditions. So here on the graph, you can see Issara Institute workers' voice metrics from 2015 up to until this year. And this is a great way to show how ongoing monitoring looks like as compared with a point in time data collection. If we go to the next slide, please. So through workers' voice and ongoing monitoring, it's possible to identify forced labor and labor trafficking issues that might be difficult to capture otherwise. In the previous graph, we saw how that ongoing monitoring looks like, and it is thanks to that that we can capture data and identify issues faced by workers in the global supply chain. Here is an example of aggregated data of workers' reported issues in a brand retailer supply chain, where we can see the highest percentage of reported issues are related to working conditions, such as involuntary overtime, unfair dismissal, and unsafe working conditions, among others. By identifying such issues, being able to hear from workers directly and working with the responsible parties, we can identify the root causes of the issues and work in long-term solution, system change, and ecosystem transformation. So for the discussion questions, these are some questions that we want you to have in your mind as we go to the end of the session. And the first one is, how can we as diverse anti-trafficking communities support workers to make the invisible forced labor visible? And how can we take a strength-based collaborative approach to driving more responsible actions to address the realities of the workers that workers are raising? If we go to the last slide, please. Thank you. So as we have been sharing today, there are alternative ways, such as worker-driven approaches, to identify and eliminate labor trafficking and exploitation. And civil society organizations can play a fundamental role on such approaches to be able to address root causes and mitigate the risk for workers. And we have also talked about the implications of lack of worker power and voice. So the question is, can we all together commit to be mindful of how to support and not supplant authentic workers' voice and workers' power building efforts? Can we commit to acknowledge that when we aspire for more ethical supply chain, more ethical industries, we see workers as having an irrepressible role in validating labor recruitment and working conditions? And can we commit to raise the value and the need to democratizing workers' voice, especially with the younger generations who have been doing an excellent job in articulating the importance of being able to define their own identities and speak out with their own voices, and not to be represented by a hierarchical structure whose apex may or not truly represent them or even understand them. So we should all band together more cohesively to push for workers being the ones to validate their own working conditions in their own words and in an ongoing and safeguarded manner. And we should push businesses to not only remediate these workers' reported issues, but also be responsible for fixing the root causes in order to prevent more workers from being harmed by the same risk in the future. Because while remediation is important and it's only transactional, unless the root causes of the abuses are acknowledged and eliminated. And it is this transformation that needs to be measurably reduce labor trafficking and exploitation in global supply chains, and to end the cycle to cheap goods being made by exploited labor in all of our jobs and markets. So with this final remarks, we want to conclude this session, and we thank you for participation, and we hope this session have give you a full understanding of what workers' voice and workers' powers is and its value. So thank you very much for joining today.